We've seen studies that show women earn less than men in the private workforce, around 82 cents to the dollar. Women who think they're being paid less for equal work can file a challenge in court. But in requesting state payroll data, we discovered a much wider gap among workers in Florida's court system. The median pay for women who work in our state courts, nearly $55,000. The median pay for men, more than $134,000. For every dollar men make, women make less than 41 cents.
When you hear those numbers, what goes through your head and heart?
I mean, that's absolutely shocking.
State Representative Anna Escamani majored in women's studies at UCF with a master's in public administration, a certificate in gender studies, and concern about our findings.
The fact that we have this huge disparity among women and men in the judicial system will have a ripple effect in how the judicial system also operates and how women and men are treated when they access the courts.
She's referring to the potential for unconscious bias, which could be more pronounced with such a pronounced disparity, which we'll delve into in a moment.
All rise.
First, we cannot definitively explain why men earn so much more than women in our courts. We need more data, and it took us more than 3 months with several follow-ups to the Florida personnel system to get what we have. But we did find some striking correlations that may help explain what's happening. First, the courts appear to disproportionately hire women to fill positions on the low end of the pay scale. And analysts see that pattern in a lot of industries.
We have, large segments of the workforce concentrated in industries that we undervalue, primarily because women, and particularly women of color, disproportionately fulfill those positions.
Meanwhile, the Florida legislature sets the salaries of judges at the top of the pay scale. And the judges who earn those six-figure salaries disproportionately appear to be men. And in other correlations, the commissions that nominate potential judges tend to skew male. Our governors who appoint judges have all been men. And in reviewing Governor DeSantis' appointments, he appears to have followed a long-running pattern of appointing more men to the bench.
It certainly flags for me a potential issue.
Stetson University College of Law Dean Jason Bent wrote a book on paycheck disparities. And while he says he needs a more sophisticated analysis to draw any conclusions, he said there are some theories that may apply, including implicit bias.
They suggest that people may tend to favor people who remind them of themselves, or maybe a younger version of themselves,
which might give male applicants an advantage with male-leaning judicial commissions and male governors.
I think that when people think of discrimination, they often are immediately thinking of intentional discrimination, conscious discrimination, and that can overlook the possibility of unintended discrimination, unintentional unconscious bias.
Many companies address this concern through diversity training, which teaches about implicit bias and ways to avoid it.
Everyone is susceptible to implicit bias.
But the governor banned that training in public schools and in the government workforce as part of his Stop Woke Act.
We're going to make sure that Florida statutes are very clear,
which could have an unpredictable impact on the gender gap in the years to come.
And then when you eliminate trainings around implicit bias in government, in schools, and trying to eliminate it in the private sector, then you're also creating a system where the problems will persist.
And she fears unconscious bias in selecting male judges could extend to unconscious bias in their rulings, which is why she said it could affect how courts operate. Now, we did find the gender mix among judges does vary from region to region. For example, there's near parity in Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco, while men outnumber women more than 2 to 1 in North Central Florida, while women outnumber men among county judges in Miami-Dade. And this is where the House Speaker's call to consolidate the circuit courts could have another unpredictable impact on the gender mix and the pay gap in our courts.
We just really don't know. There's a lot of controversy about that plan. What we are really reticent to predict are the unintended consequences.
Of course, judges are also elected or retained, so voters could figure into this as well. But in reviewing election results, we found no clear gender preference among voters. And this study from Ohio State University suggests women may have a slight advantage in races where voters may not be that familiar with the choices, like judicial races.
It is likely that you will see women, a slight edge of more women voting for women.
Dr. Susan McManus said the gender gap may close as more women go to law school and broaden their presence in the pool of potential judges.
We're already starting to see more going to law school now than men. And that will ultimately translate into more women becoming judges.
We may never know how Florida's gender pay gap in our court system compares to some other states. For example, Alabama denied our records request on grounds I'm not an Alabama citizen, but noted they don't have what we're asking for anyway. New York stated it cannot provide the information because its payroll system does not require a gender for an employee. Meanwhile, Massachusetts data shows a much smaller gap than Florida. There, women make around 87 cents to the dollar. But that may not be an apples-to-apples comparison because Massachusetts does not know the gender of around 6 court workers, and they make far less than those they count as men or women, which could make for a different investigation for reporters in Massachusetts. We did find a gender gap similar to Florida's in Georgia's court system, though it's not as pronounced. In Georgia, for every dollar men earn, women make around 49 cents. Again, compared to less than 41 cents in Florida.
A Governor DeSantis office declined our request for an interview. The state office of courts administrator did not respond to our questions. We've requested more data from Florida, and that could help determine whether there is or isn't a gap in pay for equal work if or when the state provides that information. Craig Patrick, Fox 13 News.